Bam Adebayo has been more aggressive lately. How good can the Heat be with this new version of Bam moving forward? Is this sustainable? Is this the version we're going to see for the rest of the season? Wes, you reported about it, and we'll talk about that throughout the show. Plus, we'll get Nostradamus here for a segment to give us his predictions for this week's games and a little talk about the potential buyout market and where a former Heat point guard could wind up landing. All that and more coming up next.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Heat Nation. It's a Tuesday-ish edition of Locked On Heat, your daily podcast covering all things Miami Heat, however you may be listening on YouTube or Odyssey or your favorite podcast app. Thank you so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm David Ramil, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Wes Goldberg. It's been a few days since our last episode last week. We recorded, of course, as always, following Thursday's win over the New Orleans Pelicans, and then the Brooklyn Nets played on Saturday here in Miami. And, Wes, you have your takeaways from that game. We'll talk about that later on this segment. But well, first, just quick thoughts about the Super Bowl. I think a lot of people are talking about it. So we didn't record an episode on Sunday. I didn't even watch the game at all, but I'm sure you have some thoughts about it. What was that game like?
Well, first of all, I really enjoyed the halftime show. I think that's something that everybody's doing. But now it's getting to the point where, look, all right, I was rooting for the Bengals just because I kind of just go for underdogs when I don't really care. But I really didn't care who won overall. Happy to see the Rams win. Aaron Donald, one of the greatest players we've ever seen of this generation. Good to see him get a ring. But my major takeaway was watching the halftime show, watching the commercials was, now I'm in I'm the target audience for this stuff now. Which is kind of a weird place to be in my life, I guess. When you come to that realization, like I remember watching The Who, and I always liked The Who, right? My dad was a big classic rock guy. Like I was raised on that stuff. Like, I don't know, it was 5 or 6 years ago they did the halftime show. I'm like, who is this for? Like, why are you, like, The Who are great and nothing but respect, but like they don't really want to be here. Nobody really wants to watch this. And then they come out with Dr. Dre, Eminem, Fitty does like a surprise cameo with a shout out kind of to his music video from 2002 or whatever it was. And all this Eminem's out there, like, and you're just like, oh wow, like this is so cool. Finally, something for like a younger audience like me. And then I'm like, oh wait, all this stuff is like 20 years old.
You're no longer the younger audience. Yeah.
And all the commercials like you shout out to like The Sopranos, which is, how old is that show? Like 20, 30 years ago? Did that start like 98 or something?
Yeah. I just did a rewatch of it right now, and 9/11 plays heavily in it, which of course took place in 2001. So
don't they take out the Twin Towers like in the little intro theme thing at some point?
Yes. Yeah, between like season 3 and 4, I believe they wound up taking it out. Like the first 3 seasons had it in it, and the last 2 or 3 did not. So
I got emotional. Well, during the commercial, like they had a Chevy commercial, and it was like it starts off with like the "Got Yourself a Gun" theme song, and then it's Meadow driving the car at the end, and then she like parks it, parallel parks it, and you're like, she got it finally. And I like found myself getting like a little emotional, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is all."
All right, I have not seen it, so I have no idea what you're talking about. I'll have to do a rewatch it or find it on YouTube.
Check out it. I'm sure it's on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. Everything's on YouTube.
I didn't spoil the ending. The ending is great.
Okay. Well, speaking of an ending being great, well, I don't know, maybe not so good. The Miami Heat won a 115-111 victory over the Brooklyn Nets on Saturday. You were in attendance, however, not in attendance as media for that game. The Heat started off well. No Kevin Durant, of course, still injured. No Ben Simmons, still unavailable for the team. But still a pretty good effort led by Kyrie Irving on the Nets side of things. But what were your takeaways from the game overall?
Yeah, so I was going to go to the game just as I usually do as media. But last minute, we got free tickets for the 7th row right by the Heat's bench, not behind, like right off to the side behind the basket. And so I was like, I'll do that instead. That sounds way better. So I was able to go to the game and like drink a Jack Daniels and that's something, that you don't really do when you're media, or probably ever do. But it was cool. It was a really cool experience because where our seats are as media, we're sort of like 50-yard line above the right above the lower bowl.
Right.
They're good. They're good seats, especially compared to where some of these arenas are putting.
Well, you get an
now.
overall view. You get an eagle's eye
Yeah,
view of the court on both sides of the action. So that's why it's positioned the way it is. I mean,
exactly.
personally, I'd prefer being a lot closer. I'd love being
Right.
on press row itself, so you can hear the interaction of players, which is
Right.
something that you were privy to, sitting as closely as you were.
Basically, right? Like I wasn't courtside, but I felt like it. And it was really cool because my view was right next to the Heat bench, so I could just look directly at Miami's bench, and that's not something we usually see because again, where we sit, we're behind the bench, and so we're kind of looking over them. But you kind of see a little bit of the interactions, but not a whole lot. And obviously, we're watching the game. But where I was, I could
Right.
basically watch the bench and the game at the same time. And my takeaways were that the Heat's bench is working the entire game. And I'm a big guy. I love watching benches. I love it. Any chance I have, I think you can learn a lot about a team during breaks. You know,
Mm-hmm.
who's involved in the huddle, what coaches
Mm-hmm.
are doing what. Like you could kind of get a sense of the vibe of a team
Sure.
just looking at the bench. And my sense of Miami's vibe has always been like, I'm not breaking news here. It's a good vibe, you know,
Yep.
capital C culture and all of that. But
Right.
it really stood out. And the one guy who really stood out to me, David, was Udonis Haslem. I know
I've
he
said
doesn't
before.
play every single night,
Yeah.
but he is working every game, the entire game. He's got the seat at the very end of the bench. First of all, ambassador to the Heat, just like interacting with fans the entire time, not shy to say hey or like, you know, kind of dap up somebody that's close by or whatever. Like not afraid to do any of that. But during the game itself, like he's working the entire bench. He will take a minute during the game to talk to every
Yep.
single player and coach on the Heat bench. And there are minutes where him and like Kyle Lowry, when Kyle Lowry is resting, like they're kind of like huddling up and like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Obviously, I couldn't hear what they were saying, but you could just tell like they're pointing and they're talking like intense
Right.
discussion. And he'll go over to somebody that's just come off, whether it be, you know, Gabe Vincent to Bam Adebayo, it doesn't matter, Jimmy Butler, it doesn't matter who it is.
Right.
And that to me really stood out. And everybody who might, and we've kind of heard less of this, but like, why is he taking up a roster spot and all this stuff? That's why he's there.
Yeah.
He's working the entire game, and you can tell he makes a difference. He's probably pointing things out that
Oh, no
happen
doubt.
in the game. You know?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm glad you saw it firsthand, and I'm glad that you pointed it out because for a lot of people, I'm sure they're probably pretty dismissive of the slash assistant coach title that he feels, well, that I think a lot of people have foisted upon him, but that's completely untrue at this
It's
point.
there.
Like he's observant. He's there. He's seeing things, and he's got the feel of the locker room because he's a part of it, because he does the work and everything else, and so his voice is still a respected one. Well, we've got a little long so far, but you know what? Before we wrap up this segment, I did want to talk about a piece that you just had on the West Side, your Substack, where you talked about Bam Adebayo's aggressive offensive evolution. Inside Bam Adebayo's aggressive offensive evolution is the name of the piece, and you actually interviewed Malik Allen. It was a great piece of work showing exactly how Bam has flipped the switch a little bit. You talked to Coach Allen, of course, about what happened with Bam. So I'll give you a chance here to kind of frame the idea of the piece a little bit.
Right. Well, we've been talking for about 2 weeks now about the more aggressive Bam Adebayo, right? And something changed. We could tell, like a switch sort of flipped. You and I keep saying it was a concerted effort for him to be quicker and more aggressive and stronger going to the basket specifically. One of the stats that I have is he's gone from like 18% of his shot attempts being from mid-range to 12 or 13% now. He's been more efficient even at the rim. Like those numbers don't even begin to tell you. Like the shots are just better looks because he's being more aggressive and more purposeful with how he moves around the court. And one of the things I wondered about was you look at the stats, and there's a clear break between that 30-point loss in Boston, right, on January 31st, and all the games since then, the 6 games now that Miami's played since then in the last 2 weeks. There's a clear break. There's a clear change just in the box score. Like I said, you can't really tell how much better he's been just from the box score, but you could sense that something has changed just from the box score. And so I was on a phone call with Malik Allen. I was asking him about that, and basically, Malik Allen, of course, works very closely with Bam. But that Bam took – and here's the quote I'll just say. After that 30-point loss to Boston, he didn't take it well. He took it personal.
Yeah.
And
was he quoting Michael Jordan for The Last Dance, or was it?
It was a little bit, right? That was my immediate thought when he said that to me on the phone. I was like, all right, then boom, there's my lead. Thank you very much. But like he gets onto the plane. And they're on the first night of a back-to-back set. Remember, they played in Toronto the next night.
Right.
And he basically just went over the film with Malik Allen and other coaches and everything like this. And he was like, where can I be more aggressive? Where can I not play like a role player? Because in that game against Boston, he took just 11 shots on a night where Jimmy Butler wasn't there because of an ankle, because Lowry was out with the personal reason stuff. He took as many shots as Caleb Martin, who we all know is on a two-way contract. Like, you're the star of the team. You're now the lone star of the team without Jimmy and Kyle out there. So he knew he needed to be better, and ever since he's been better. We've been talking about this all along. So I did a little bit of reporting, and basically it was exactly kind of what my hypothesis was, which is kind of a rare thing, but it was exactly what I thought. It was, oh yeah, after that Boston game, he's like, I got to be better, and he has been. He's been a lot better.
I'm glad that Bam took ownership, that he recognized that there was something necessary there, because so often players get kind of, they dig their heels a little bit and say, you know what, this is who I am, this is what I'm going to do, and he's resisted it. Yeah, well, I mean, that's certainly a glaring example right now. At the same time, I think a lot of players do it to some degree, but Bam showing some flexibility there, the ability to say, you know what, this is not enough. I need to be better. And this is what's criticized of him most often, too, ironically enough, is that everybody says, oh, you need to be better, you need to be better. And he's still improving, and he's still gotten better, as we pointed out many times over the course of his career. His numbers have always shown growth, but there's always something that feels a little bit less that he's capable of giving, and I think this is where we see this best version of him. So my question is, do you think it just comes down to just being more aggressive, or was there something in Malik's coaching that he could point out where he could possibly be more effective?
Well, first of all, Malik is careful not to give himself all the credit. He's just sort of the guy that, you know, Bam is a guy who's also just as involved. Here's where I could be better and all that stuff. But it's everybody. It's what Eric Spoelstra is saying. It's Pat Riley's message from the top down. I have a quote in there from Pat Riley's press conference earlier in the year. He's like, it's everybody. It's everybody. Right. But and there's a film breakdown, so please go to wesgoldberg.substack.com so you can see all of this. But it's much easier laid out than talking about it. But there are just moments in a game, like all that dribble handoff stuff that he does with Duncan Robinson and everybody else, like all the facilitating that he has gotten accustomed to doing as a function of this Heat offense. I kind of feel like there was a little bit of a malaise with that. Like he's just sort of going through the motions on offensive possessions. You're just, handoff here, screen there, blah, blah, blah. And you can tell it's like now there are moments where he's just sort of ad-libbing a little bit more on the court, right? Instead of just going into a dribble handoff with Duncan or whoever, like he's kind of going into new spots on the court, covering new ground. He's, setting harder screens and then just diving at the rim in moments that he doesn't, like in sort of these surprise moments, catching the defense off guard, getting the big men defending him wrong-footed and then attacking them. We talked about that incredible like little drop step to a floater over Jonas Valanciunas against New Orleans. It's stuff like that. Like we're just like, oh, where did that come from? This didn't make the story, but I asked Malik Allen, like, does he still surprise you? You've been working with Bam all these years. Does he still surprise you? And he said he does. And the reason he does is because, he's such a fundamental basketball player. He's a freak athlete.
Sure.
And those are like the gifts that he has been given, that talent, that athleticism, like that top 1% athleticism that he has. But he's a very fundamental player, and he kind of exists within those fundamentals. But then every once in a while, he just springs on you this crazy athletic feat that you're like, where did that come from? Oh, right. He could do this every play if he wanted to. He just doesn't. That's not the way he plays. And so that was what Malik was saying. He's like, we're starting to see that more now. Right. And it's within the fundamentals of the offense. He's not freelancing. He's not like going off on his own. He's not isolating. It's all within the flow of the offense. And so to me, the big question that still hangs on this over Bam and this team is this sustainable? Did he just finally strike the right balance, or has he just got the hot hand right now? I don't know. There's no way to know. But I do know that there's a mindset thing, too. It's more than just the hot hand right now. There's a mindset thing, too. He's figured it out with Kyle Lowry. There's a clicking that's happening there. He's had it figured out with Jimmy. He's had it figured out with the role player teammates that he has, obviously. So I'm optimistic that this is sustainable. And it's not even the box score stuff. It's more of the mindset stuff that the Heat need, because we've been saying it. They need 2019 bubble Bam, probably a better version of that, certainly a better version of that, to get to the finals again this year. And I think everybody, including Bam, is starting to recognize that and maybe even deliver on it.
And to piggyback on what you were saying about whether or not it's sustainable. For one, I am agreeing with you. I think that it's more than likely that he can't keep this going. Like, he's going to have an occasional night where he's not looking to score because somebody else has it dialed up, or because he's looking to feed Jimmy or Kyle or Duncan or somebody along those lines. And that's just the nature of who Bam is. But at the same time, if we see this work consistently, I think it ties into everything that we've been saying about the versatility and depth of this roster, is that you can't plan for any one player. You have so many different players that can step up on any given night and do so many different things effectively that it keeps defenses on their toes. It's impossible to guard this team effectively when they've got it rolling like this. And I think that's what Bam adds. This new version, this new aggressive version of Bam adds a different dimension to a team that was already plenty dangerous. So it's good to see, and it's good for Miami in terms of being able to achieve even greater success this year. But we'll talk a little bit more about some of this week's games, and Nostradamus will offer his predictions for that. And of course, I'll launch into my Monday Madness tirade before we talk about the return of Goran Dragic. Is it possible, or is he joining another Eastern Conference contender? But first, a reminder that BetOnline is a sponsor of this show. Football might be over for this season, but basketball is in full steam for both pro and college hoops. For the latest odds, totals, player performance props, or where the next fired coach is going to land. BetOnline.net is the #1 spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your source for hockey, boxing, the UFC, odds, right to the Olympic coverage and information. That's right, the Olympics are taking place. And maybe not a lot of people are following, but it's absolutely there on BetOnline.net. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Look who's back.
Thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast, nightly recaps of every NBA game with analysis from our local experts. It's free. It's available wherever you get your podcasts. All right, it's time to make some predictions for this week in Miami Heat basketball. It is time for Nostradamus, David. Let's get started with our first game Tuesday night against the Dallas Mavericks, hosting them at FTX Arena.
Yeah, that should be a fun game. Of course, it won't have the large Slovenian contingent it's had in years past there when Luka Doncic and Goran Dragic met at the FTX Arena, or American Airlines Arena at that point in time. But Luka is still the story of the game, at least where I'm coming from. On Tuesday, can the Heat slow down Luka Doncic?
So Luka Doncic, these last 8 games, 35.5 points per game. He's scored 40-plus in 3 of these games, including a career-high 51-point night against the Clippers on Thursday night. Can the Heat slow down Luka Doncic? I don't know. I think they'll put Kyle Lowry on him. I think they'll put Jimmy Butler on him. We'll see if Caleb Martin is coming back. Probably, I think he's questionable as of now, but they've got bodies, right? Luka Doncic is gonna put the Heat in switches. The Heat love to switch. They're very good at it. We're going to have a lot of moments where Bam Adebayo is guarding Luka Doncic on the perimeter because they run so much of that 1-5 pick and roll stuff. We're going to see everybody get a chance at it. And I really don't know, David, because Luka Doncic is one of the best 5, 6, 7 players in the NBA, right? Offensive, and only because of what he does offensively, right? He's not bringing a whole lot to the table defensively. What we saw Kyrie Irving do, 20 points in the fourth quarter, for the Nets on Saturday night, I think that there are still moments where Miami could give up stuff. It's the NBA, right? As good as a defense as you could play, sometimes an offensive player is just too great, and it doesn't matter what kind of defense you play. Like I said, I think the Heat will throw the kitchen sink at him. You're really not worried about anything else that the other Mavericks are bringing to the table. They're going to load up on Doncic, and I still don't know if it's going to be enough the way that he's playing. I have no idea.
Yeah, I feel like he hasn't always had big games against Miami because Miami does seem to take him out of his comfort zone to some extent. But I think he's been playing too well of late. I think it's harder to stop him. My bigger concern is somebody like, ironically enough, a Reggie Bullock type who could go off on the perimeter and you have like a 24-point night, and that would be just enough to keep them in the game there. I don't know. Doncic is going to be fun to watch for a lot of people. Some people I know kind of upset about his style of play overall, but I think Miami's going to try their best, and ultimately they're going to wind up falling short, and he's just going to wind up getting his points. That's my prediction. I think Luka Doncic is going to be a very good player on Tuesday night, but I think Miami still comes away with a victory, so I'm not sure if that's a prediction.
Oh, I thought when you said falling short, I thought you meant that they were going to lose the game.
No.
No, Dallas is a
Absolutely.
good team. Like, don't get me wrong.
They
Like,
are.
Dallas is, they very easily could win this game. Uh, I don't know. I don't know who wins or loses. That's not Nostradamus's area of
Area of expertise.
expertise.
Yes.
But I will say that the Heat will try very hard to stop Luka Doncic. How's that
That's a
for
good point. That's a good
not
point. That's a
prediction?
hot take.
There you go.
On Thursday, the last game before the All-Star break, the Heat travel to Charlotte, where they will take on the Hornets game. Will it be a repeat of the last game against the Hornets on February 5th? The Heat won 104-86. They got 20 points from Bam Adebayo, 27 points from Jimmy Butler. He led the way, and they held LaMelo Ball, all-star LaMelo Ball. This doesn't feel right saying it. 12 points on 5 of 11 shooting. So Nostradamus, is this going to be a repeat of that last game against the Hornets?
First of all, LaMelo Ball feels like an all-star. What are you talking about?
No, he doesn't. He feels like a showboater. That's all.
What's the difference?
Ah,
That's who I want in the All-Star game.
okay.
Yeah, I think it's going to be. Miami has not lost to the Hornets yet this season, right? This is their third meeting. They
You
won
jinxed
last
it.
time, and
You
they
give it
won.
the jinx right there.
That was a jinx. I shouldn't have done that. You're right. They won in the opening month, 114-99. So they've won by double digits every time they've played this Hornets team. They have their number. Just to double down on my jinx a little bit more. They don't. So this is their third of 4 games. They don't play their last game against them until the last week of the season. So this one, of course, in Charlotte, just like the last one. I think it'll be a repeat of the last one. I think the Heat are better now than they were then. That was back February 5th. We started to see that trio of Butler, Bam, and Kyle Lowry starting to kind of be back on the floor together. Right before that, it was only 14 games that we had seen them. They've played now together for the last 5 games. Their chemistry is clearly picked up. We've been talking about, I think it was the New Orleans game. Was that after the New Orleans game? It felt like finally this was a big 3. I think it was that game. They were that way too against Brooklyn over the weekend. And I think it'll be the case in Charlotte. That big 3 is just starting to fit and click in the right ways. And all those role players are just doing what they have to do. I think the Heat are playing their best basketball of the season right now. Charlotte's been fine, not great. They've been a little injured here and there. They made some moves on the deadline. We'll see if that helps them over later in this week. But yeah, I think it will be a repeat because I have no reason to think otherwise.
Well, they traded away Ish Smith, so they don't have a Heat killer on that roster.
One of those popular players in the NBA. Before a game, Ish Smith is literally hugging and high-fiving and dapping every assistant coach and every player on the opposing team. I've never seen a player more popular than Ish Smith. It's crazy.
That's what happens when you're on your 13th team, though.
I get it, but maybe that's – well, it's like a chicken or the egg thing. Are you in the league this long because you're just so likable? Or are you so likable because you've been in the league so long? I don't know.
I think it's the latter. I mean, I've talked to him about it because I know I talked to him about it for something else I'm working on. But, just like that vibe of like having to go to another game and things of that sort, and go to another team and kind of find your way in there. He just puts his head down, does his work, and he tries to be upbeat about everything. So it's kind of worked both ways, I guess you could say. But in any case, I wonder if Bam, to continue the theory of what we were talking about in the first segment, I wonder if he'll take it personally that he wasn't selected as an all-star and that LaMelo was.
Look, he tends to take things personal. I don't know. I don't know that he was a snub. The Heat were really pushing for Bam, not as much as they were pushing for Tyler Herro, but they were pushing for Bam. I don't think he'll take it personally. I don't know. You never know what these are. They take everything as a slight. You missed 22 games in the start of the season. Like I'll say this. I think it's going to look really strange by the end of the year that Bam wasn't on the All-Star team. People are going to look at his numbers and what he's doing, and they're like, he wasn't an All-Star? Oh, right. He missed 22 games because of a thumb ligament thing. And for that reason, it makes sense. But it's going to look weird.
Has that NBA Finals MVP never made the All-Star team the year before? That's the big question. Anyway, yeah. A Sunday, February 20th.
Kawhi, probably, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that would probably be the last. Yeah.
Andre Iguodala, too. Iguodala also.
Yeah. All right. There. Poked holes in that argument real quick.
All right.
All-Star game.
Yeah, the All-Star game will be on Sunday, February 20th. It'll be a great show for everybody. And the big question, as the Miami Heat will be represented there by Jimmy Butler, is, well, how many points will Jimmy score in the All-Star game?
Well, if you ask Jimmy, he thinks Eric Spoelstra, who's coaching the team, should just give him every shot. I don't think Spo will do that. It'll be interesting. There's a couple little dynamics at play here. Does Spo not play Jimmy Butler a whole bunch of minutes because he wants to give Jimmy some rest? He'll be, he'll give him his due. He'll let him play some big minutes, obviously, like some important minutes, I should say. But does he kind of who's playing the most minutes on this team? Is it maybe the guys that are playing for Brooklyn and Philly and Milwaukee? Do they end up playing more minutes than the guys that are playing for Miami and Charlotte, for example, who they're not very concerned with? I don't know. The other dynamic here, too, is Jimmy Butler thinks he's the best player on the court every single time he goes out there. Does he try to prove it in the All-Star game? He didn't make it last year.
Yeah.
I don't know how much he really cares about the All-Star game stuff, but now that he's here, he's here. You're here. I think Jimmy's one of these guys that tries to make the most out of these things, and he'll do it with Michelob Ultra commercials and appearances in Cleveland and all that kind of stuff, and whatever he's doing with cryptocurrency and all that stuff. But when the game starts, does he try to be like, you know what, I'm better than everybody else on the floor, and my team is the favorite, or I think my team should be the favorite. The Heat should be the favorite. Nobody's talking about us. Let me put us on the national stage. And I could see him going that way. I could also see him going the other way and being like, you know what, I'm just here for a good time. I'm going to get everybody involved, and I'm going to rack up like 20 assists in this game or something. Like, I could see him going both. I have no idea. It'll be really interesting.
I'll tell you what. I was there in Chicago when the Heat were well represented. Bam had won the skills contest. Derrick Jones Jr. won the slam dunk contest. Duncan fell short in the 3-point shootout. Jimmy an all-star, Bam an all-star, and Jimmy. Well, I don't want to go so far as to say he laid an egg out there, but he was not a very productive player in terms of the All-Star. I think we're going to get a repeat of that. It's just, he doesn't care. I think he's just done at this point. Like, he's got the accolade already. The only thing that's missing for him and his legacy, if he wins a title, I think then the conversations about a Hall of Fame career start becoming much more earnest. Yeah. So I get the feeling that an all-star performance and eclipsing even double digits probably isn't going to be happening on Sunday.
His game's not really made for it's a lot of jump shooting in the all-star game, but he could get some open. I'm gonna go out on. I'm gonna say 14 points to answer the question. I'm gonna say 14 points in the all-star game. Wow. I know it's a lot. It feels like a lot, but I'm gonna say a lot. I think he gets a bunch of easy layups early on.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens. It'll be a fun game regardless. Should be interesting to see exactly how it plays out. Bam should still be there, missing 22 games or not. But in the next segment, we'll talk a little bit about Goran Dragic, where he stands, and an ESPN report that came out over the weekend regarding some of the potential suitors for his services and whether or not he might eventually choose the Miami Heat anyway. But first, a reminder that this show is sponsored by Built Bar. It's that time of year where most of you have probably given up on all of your New Year's resolutions, but not this year. I'm sure you're probably liking this. You want to stick with it. You want to eat healthy. And if you want to eat healthy and stick to your resolutions, well, the answer for you is Built Bar. It's so easy to stick to your resolutions because it almost feels like it's not really like a sacrifice or giving up anything at all. It's not a resolution because you actually enjoy eating Built Bar so much. They've got their new puffs. They're missing out if you haven't tried these already because it's their first ever protein infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy. They're not just a protein bar, they're a treat, and they're covered in 100% chocolate, just like all of Built Bar's incredible tasting bars. Soft, easy to chew. You don't even know that you're eating a protein bar, but you're getting all the nutrients that you might be looking for in any kind of bar. So make sure you try them out. You can get a mix box. I'm a big fan of those because you can mix and match flavors. Keep some for yourself. Give some out to friends, family, and coworkers. You won't go wrong, and you'll be popular. They're a great hit. My wife gives out some Built Bars at work, and her coworkers really, really appreciate when she does that. So in any case, make sure you go to Built.com. Use the promo code LOCK15, and you get 15% off your order. Use the promo code LOCK15. You get 15% off, but only if you go to Built.com. Just a reminder that you can always reach us via email at lockedonheat@gmail.com or via Twitter using the hashtag AskLOHeat. Be sure to please subscribe to the show and leave a review. We'll talk about Goran Dragic because an ESPN report makes it seem like he might join an Eastern Conference contender, but it's not the Miami Heat. But first, Monday Madness. That's right. My opportunity to start off the week with a little bit of an angry tirade because you know what? I get fed up sometimes. I know everybody thinks, you know what? He's got this calm demeanor. That's not true. I'm actually not calm.
Very angry?
Yeah, I'm actually very, very angry. I'm, kind of like the Bruce Banner Hulk character, keep it controlled most of the time because you don't want that anger to slip up there. But I will say that what's got me pissed off of late, Wes, is just, well, fuck it. Everything's got me pissed off of late because you can't say a goddamn thing about anything positively without having some asshole on social media chime in and rip your feelings about that. Like you just said something positive about the halftime performance, and I am guaranteeing that somebody in the comments will find some way of tearing down your appreciation of Dr. Dre and Eminem and Snoop Dogg or something like that. I saw that over the course of the last few hours, having not seen the Super Bowl myself and seeing a number of tweets about, oh, show is great, love this, etc. And all of a sudden somebody comes in right away. It's almost like somebody's waiting for the opportunity to say something negative about anything. And how it pertains to this Heat, like this version of this team is so much fun. We can always enjoy what this team does and the way they play, the style they attack with. They're going to go far in the playoffs. They've got chemistry. Like, what are you looking for if not this version of this team? I mean, why do you follow basketball if not to see a version of this Heat team? And yet so many people choosing to be negative when they could, in fact, be positive instead. I don't know. I know already I can feel like the okay boomer conversation or something along those lines. And first of all, that's got me pissed off too, because if you don't know what a boomer is, you shouldn't be using it in a goddamn sense. But anyway,
okay.
Boomer is, I am not 75 years old, so I do not qualify as a boomer. That's that generation there. But that's my 2 cents. I don't know if you've got anything to add to it yet, because I'm sick of seeing the negative feedback.
No, look, negative feedback kind of comes with the jobs that we have.
Am I just being sensitive here?
No. But I think from what I understand, you're kind of taking more of a macro thing. It's not necessarily the people against you. It's just sort of like, why can't I log on to social media and just have a nice conversation about something that I enjoy?
That's it.
And the answer is nobody knows, but you can't. That's because it's social media. So sorry about it. And you're right. Like, look, if it wasn't for this job, man, I wouldn't even be on Twitter. I've thought about ways to get rid of Twitter and still do this job. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if it's doable. It's a really tough place to be. My new sort of thing that I've been doing is if I tweet something out that I think is, first of all, the whole thing of, hey, this is really good and this is really bad, that just as a concept of a tweet isn't really a great tweet. Like, I don't know. I just feel like people should just, like, before hitting send, like, try to think a little bit harder about something interesting to say than like, wow, this is good. And it's like, all right, cool. Like, that's nice, man.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, it's like, all right. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I just try to interact with people on a one-on-one basis, because we have met people on Twitter. You and I met online. Like, it's a cool place to meet people. There are definitely positives, but it is becoming increasingly more difficult to block out the noise. And I don't know that anybody has an answer to it. So,
all right. Fair enough. I didn't know if I was necessarily asking for solutions. I guess just my weekly plea, just be better. Just be better to everybody. Why not? Why, that shouldn't be so hard. Like, I don't know. I keep thinking back about a time when, we used to, I know this is going down a hell of a tangent here. There used to be a time where we didn't need weekly reminders that Nazis were pieces of shit. And yet somehow here we are in a world. It's like, well, let's listen to both sides. No, shove that up your ass. I don't care.
Right.
They're still Nazis. There was a reason why they were evil, and why we all consider them pretty largely.
We listened to both sides in World War II. It didn't work out great.
Right. All right. Let's move on, where we're listening to ESPN's side of things, considering the potential next step for Goran Dragic. Of course, he was traded from the Toronto Raptors to the San Antonio Spurs. And according to Adrian Wojnarowski, they are in heavy negotiations for a buyout. So who knows what happens with the rest of Goran's contract, but it seems likely that he will be a free agent soon. And on top of that, as a free agent, he's expected to draw some interest from the following list of teams: the Los Angeles Lakers, Golden State Warriors, the Clippers, Bucks, Bulls, and Nets. And they're in aggressive pursuit of Dragic, sources said. So that's interesting because, well, I mean, you can make a case for all of these teams. I don't know that I don't know, not covering these teams as well as I do Miami, I don't know exactly how he would fit in onto that roster. And I don't know what Goran necessarily is seeking for at this point in his career, whether it's more opportunity, playing time, the chance to parlay this next month and a half of the regular season into a big contract next year. It's always a possibility in the NBA. You never know. So I'm not exactly sure where he winds up going in there. And I don't know that they necessarily represent a better destination than a team that I thought he would be likely to join. But do you think it seems likely that he'll join a team other than Miami at this point, considering this report?
Yeah, I think so. There's a couple ways to read it. Number one, all those teams that he listed could be considered contenders. I guess it depends. The LA teams, it depends on when Kawhi and Paul George comes back. Is Goran Dragic hearing something that we're not? It's possible, right? The Lakers, nobody would view them as championship contenders, but there is still a ton amount of respect for LeBron James.
Dangerous
and that's
loomers.
why, yeah, I don't know. I think a guy like Dragic who is seeking a championship, that's what that list represents to me. And that's why maybe the Warriors are on that list. I don't really see the Warriors as a real option. They have 15 players on the roster. They'd have to make a move. It would add a lot more to their luxury tax. They're already in the repeater, I believe, and all that stuff. I don't know that Dragic is really a fit there, but we'll see. But I'm kind of looking at is this coming from Dragic's camp, this report from Woj? It's possible. And if that's the case, are the Heat really not interested in bringing back Goran Dragic? Because as soon as he got traded to the Spurs, every Heat fan keeping up was like, he's coming back to Miami. Let's go. And he's been at these games. He was at a game this weekend or last week, wasn't he? Like he's working out in South Florida. He's doing all these things. Like you'd like to see him. Everybody was celebrating once this happened because you're like, wow, he's coming back. They cleared the room with the KZ Okpala trade. Let's do this. And maybe that's still the case. The Heat, like they don't really broadcast their intentions. They made the KZ Okpala trade. Woj, Shams, Mark Stein, Chris Haynes. They didn't have the report.
They saw it at the same time.
It was an email.
Yeah, that's right.
Gmail told me. Yeah. And I was like, all right, cool. Like that was weird. And so maybe that happens again. You just don't know where the Heat's intentions are. Even Woj doesn't know because Woj didn't know before. So why would he know now what the Heat are thinking? And so I don't know. But
you bring up a good point about the source of the sources, right?
Right.
It's probably coming from Dragic's camp. At this point, maybe there are no aggressive pursuers regarding Goran Dragic at this stage.
Or there are, and they're just not Miami.
Right. It's possible. But, I mean, even let's just say it's a foregone conclusion that Goran wants to come to Miami. As the agent, he has to do their due diligence and say, no. We want to make sure that everybody knows that you're a hot item out there, that we want to put you out there. Lots of teams, all these teams are pursuing him, aggressively pursuing
all these potential championship teams, Miami. So you're gonna have to pay up for them. That's possible. It's certainly possible. The Heat have been very public about not wanting to be in the luxury tax. So they only have $1.9 million of room, and they do have to promote Caleb Martin. So there's only a limited amount. Now, if you're Goran Dragic and you're his agent, you don't care if Mickey Harrison has to pay a luxury tax. And maybe that's what part of this is hey, this is Goran Dragic.
You want him?
He's a Heat Hall of Famer, right? Like you're gonna have to pay the luxury tax to get him. Maybe that's part of. Maybe you're right. Maybe that's part of the leverage. I don't know. Ultimately, I never really thought he was coming back to Miami. I still think that at the end of the day, he wants an opportunity to play a real meaningful role, and I just don't know that it's there for the Heat. I don't think that they want to upend their rotation. I think at this point, Gabe Vincent does more for this team, what they need, than Dragic does. And I don't think you want to replace Gabe Vincent in the rotation with Goran Dragic. Like I don't know. I don't know where he plays. He could play spot minutes here and there, but he would get a lot more time in Milwaukee. We get a lot more playing time for the LA teams. We get a lot more playing time for a lot of these other teams. So I don't know. I still have no idea. Who knows?
That's a good point. It'll be interesting to see. We wish him well, regardless of where he winds up. Whether or not,
I'd be happy to be proven wrong.
Yeah, although I'd be weird seeing him in a Milwaukee jersey, considering how well he played against the Bucks a couple years ago in the Orlando bubble, and has been just a big part of this team and their success over the last few years. But we'll see how it plays out. If anything, maybe I could see it. No reunion with the Phoenix Suns team. They weren't listed as one of those potential groups there. But anyway, it'll be interesting to watch, and of course, we'll break the news whenever that does happen. Thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Remember that every episode is always free and available wherever you get the show. So make sure you subscribe. That's the key to get the best coverage available. Make sure to also check out Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all of your gambling needs. This is David Ramil signing off for now. Thanks so much for joining me, Wes.
Wrap it up, B.